Hello, welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today you catch me here as I'm sitting staring at my computer monitor. I'm going through a bunch of pictures that I've taken with my newly acquired Canon EOS R6, the camera that I'm actually using to record this video right now, so I can't show it to you. But I got this camera recently. It's a fancy camera. It's the newest, or one of the newest, mirrorless cameras that Canon has put out. It came out in July, I think, along with the EOS R5. This is the slightly, I guess you could call it upper mid-range camera. It has the 20.1 megapixel sensor as opposed to the R5's 45 megapixel sensor. But it's still a pretty nice camera. It's still rather fancy. It has all sorts of features that you would think could help make you a good photographer. And I guess that's the question I want to answer with this video. Since I've gotten this camera, I have tried to take more pictures. I never really took pictures very seriously. There was a brief period in college when I took a photography class with an old, I guess just an SLR, a film camera. And then, you know, I snap snapshots with my iPhone 11 Pro. That's what this is. I take snapshots, I take thumbnails, things for videos that I'm posting on YouTube, but I haven't really gotten into photography. But now that I have this camera right here, I thought it would be a waste if I didn't actually try to delve more into photography. And obviously, photography is a huge subject. There are so many things to learn. You go to aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and then composition, and all these different things to make a good shot, a well-exposed shot, a creative shot. And obviously you're not gonna pick all of that up within a couple weeks, which is how long I've had this camera. But this camera is fantastic. I'm a fairly creative, fairly artistic person, so you would think, put those two things together, I'd be a pretty good photographer, right? Well, we'll see. I'm going to show you some pictures that I've taken since I've gotten this camera. My attempts at taking photos as opposed to snapshots. We're going to go through them. I'll talk to you about the circumstances under which I took them and whether or not the camera has helped me take better pictures. And then I think ultimately some of the things I've learned since I've gotten this new camera and tried to take these pictures. So let's jump in. Okay, gang, so we have switched to my desktop view. I have Photoshop open. I also have Lightroom open around here somewhere as well. And we're going to go through some pictures. I have hundreds on here. We're not going to go through all of them, but I just want to show you kind of the experience I've had using the R6, which now I suppose you can see. Here it is. It was just recording me as I was doing the talk to camera portion of the video. But here is me trying to learn, and these are some of the lessons that I've learned. This is the very first photo that I ever took with my Canon EOS R6. As you can see, not that exciting, but I was like, hey, there's my foot. Can I get some depth of field here? This is before I realized, or before I decided that maybe I should be taking JPEGs and RAW pictures at the same time. Right now I'm doing JPEG and CRAW, which is a slightly more compressed version of RAW, but we'll get to that. So a lot of the pictures you're going to see are just unedited JPEGs, some are edited JPEGs, some are the RAW files, so I'll try to let you know when we go through it. So just playing around with the camera, I'm like, oh, this is a fancy camera. I should be able to take really good pictures, right? Well, let's see. Hey, look, it's my beautiful fiance. Not bad, but you know, that's just kind of a snapshot. Here is testing out the depth of field and everything. I'm trying to get used to using the different controls for doing exposure or doing ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. So I think I've shot this at f4, so I got a little bit of depth of field there. I think a nice first photo, but nothing exciting. These are just snapshots so far. Now again, this is just an unedited JPEG, but here's something that I found out very quickly. I think I'm zoomed in to 70 or 80 millimeters here, and this is when I realized, oh look, the compression when you're shooting at a longer focal length makes people look really good. That's my fiance again. Yeah, and she looks really good. If you're shooting someone at like 15 millimeters wide angle at close up, their features are going to look all stretched out. That's something I didn't know yet, but I've learned now through using this camera. Okay, we're skipping through a lot. Here we come to me just trying to take some pictures of my pedal board, and I'm fiddling with exposure. And I don't really know what should I be exposing for. This is kind of a brighter, lighter color here. We have some darker things around. I'm learning about metering in the camera. Like, am I doing spot metering? Am I doing sort of a cumulative meter of the entire scene? And so I'm playing around with these different exposures and then realizing, oh, okay, now I'm starting to get it. It's looking a little better. And there you go. That picture looks a little better. Narrow depth of field there. Well, f4 is as good as you can get with f4. So I'm starting to learn a little bit about exposure, and I'm just learning all of this through taking pictures and seeing like, okay, should I be exposing for these shadows here or for the highlights here? It's an interesting process. And when you're shooting in manual mode on a camera like the EOS R6, you get to see a very good visual representation of all that as you do it, and then you get to see the results. So you're learning all the time. Here I'm playing a little bit with focus and depth of field. Like, what will it do? Can I frame a photo with two parts that are very much closer to the lens and that are out of focus? I mean, obviously the subject isn't very interesting here. Oh, and look, now I'm focused on the close object, the depth of field. I don't know. I'm learning things. I'm trying to figure things out. It's all just kind of experimentation for me at this phase. Here I'm sort of playing with light, trying to see what happens when I wanted to catch this beam of light coming in. But then do you expose for that? Do you expose for the image? You know, and these are all unedited JPEGs so far. I haven't quite delved into Lightroom by this point and when I started taking pictures. So still just sort of figuring out, playing with light, playing with shadow. Now, I love crows. I think they're great, and I like to feed them peanuts sometimes. Peanuts. And I wanted to try to get some pictures of crows. So this is my first attempt. The longest lens I have is the only lens I have. It's the 24 to 105. So 105, I thought, oh, that's a pretty far-reaching lens. I should be able to take pictures of birds, right? Right? Well, yes and no. So let's take a look at this. If we zoom in here, he's not really very in focus, is he? We're at, let's see, let's go to fit on screen, then we'll go to 100%. So this is 100% crop here, not super in focus. If we go to the next one, again, we're not really getting in focus. Well, he's kind of in focus. That's not bad, but again, you have to crop in so much to get a usable picture when you're at 105. So I'm learning here that maybe 105 is not a long enough focal length to be photographing birds. Another thing that I've discovered is like, oh, I thought that the animal eye focus on the Canon R6, which by all accounts is supposed to be great, like, isn't that supposed to be grabbing them? And it looked in the viewfinder that it was grabbing their eyes and getting perfect focus. And what I didn't realize is I was probably shooting at like 1/200 or so for a shutter speed. And I realized after this attempt at me taking pictures of birds, oh, I've got to up the shutter speed by a lot. And then you realize, okay, if I'm shooting at 1/2000, is an f4 aperture wide enough for me to get enough light? And then you have to start playing with the ISO. So it's all these things that come together, and it's all just been a really interesting learning experience. Almost none of these pictures of the crows look as though they're in focus. They all look a little soft, but it's mostly because of the shutter speed. Just wasn't quite high enough for this. You can see this one's not bad, but yeah, there's still a little softness around there because there's movement. Birds move quickly, so you've got to go with the higher shutter speed. I learned that lesson. Okay, now here's when I started to realize that, oh, I can use Lightroom and I can edit photos in Lightroom. So these are edited JPEGs from raw photos. And this is me trying to be a little bit more cognizant of my composition. So on this one, I don't know. I don't know if I have the eye yet to decide, but I kind of thought that I liked this because you have this one central leaf here with the hole in it that's out of focus. You have the sun coming through the canopy. When you zoom in there, you can actually see the veins of the leaf as the sun is shining through. But all around, you just get kind of this blurred, out of focus image of the branches, and I don't know. I kind of like that one. I thought it was kind of good. And here it's me just trying to see, okay, I'm trying to compose these shots, trying to get the exposures right. Is this an interesting picture? I don't know. But again, I'm just experimenting. I liked this. I just like the shape and the movement of the tree. And I'm also trying to figure out what aperture do I need for this. Should I be it wide open at f4, or do I need to be at like f5.6 or f8? Do I need more texture and detail? Do I need a larger depth of field as I'm photographing trees or landscapes or things like that? So these are my attempts at learning. Again, these were taken from raw photos. These are edited JPEGs after going through Lightroom. So I don't know. I kind of liked this. I liked the fact that there's sort of this diagonal line where you have this darker area and then this lighter area, and the splotches of color in the background from the out of focus from the blurry background. That's with f4 too. So you can imagine with like a 1.8 or something, that would be really just obliterated. Here I just enjoyed, it's a really overcast day, but there just happened to be this sheen of light coming down on this tree and these golden leaves. You zoom in, you can see, I think I had a pretty wide aperture or a pretty narrow aperture here, because I think I'm pretty in focus all around. And again, I don't know, I thought I wanted to get that whole canopy, so I narrowed down the aperture a bit. Again, learning. Here's just a nice landscape of this park. I think I like this composition, sort of following the rule of thirds here. Just developing the eye. I think that's okay. Here I just have a shot down a sidewalk that for some reason I just found compelling. I don't know if it's just the various kind of intersecting lines that are coming through here, but I enjoyed that. So this is me just walking around with the camera. Can I take pictures that aren't just snapshots? Do they look interesting? I haven't decided yet, but I think we're getting there. And then we get to Thanksgiving. I was over at my mom's and then over at my dad's. This is my sister's dog, checking out the animal eye focus. And by this point, I'm pretty good at getting my exposure right. I'm pretty good at getting my shutter speed right. This dog started running around. This is Beck, my sister's dog. And I started missing some pictures because she was just moving so quickly and I didn't have the shutter speed quite high enough. But the animal eye focus does work quite well. You can see that that's pretty damn nice there. So we just have various pictures here of Beck jumping around like a maniac. This one was able to freeze the action pretty well. I think by this point I had maybe bumped the shutter speed up to like 1/500 or so. But yeah, I was mostly just checking out the animal eye focus and seeing how that worked. I think some of these shots are actually pretty good. I like the colors, and these are edited from RAW as well. And you can really see that it's just dead on her eyes. That focus point there works really well on the Canon EOS R6. Now here is me trying to take some candid shots of my relatives. This is my little brother, his wife, and their daughter. But you can see here that we're starting to get kind of noisy. Maybe not quite as bad here, but I'm bumping up the ISO and learning that relationship between noise and ISO. And, if I'm taking a shutter speed with a baby, this baby is just going crazy, running around everywhere. I have to have a pretty high shutter speed, but then that means I'm not getting enough light into the camera. So it's this interesting balance that you can sort of understand intellectually, but then when you actually start taking pictures, that's when you learn what the changes you make on your dials and buttons actually translate to in the finished image. So I'll just go through some of these. Like here, did not have the shutter speed high enough. She was just moving around like a crazy person. It kind of makes an interesting picture, I guess, but she's just not in focus at all because she's just thrashing around all over the place. Just zip through some of these. I think the camera takes a really great image. I think that's one thing you could see throughout this video so far. Whether or not I'm taking good images, that's another thing. Compositionally, I'm getting pretty good at the exposure. Here we can see Beck again. I think the detail there is quite nice and just focus right on her eye. My brother's dog. I like this picture, but you can see again, I didn't have the shutter speed high enough because he was moving a little and there's a little softness around the face because he was jerking his head around. So small children, dogs, I think I want to be around, I don't know, over 500. And then with birds, 2,000, it seems like. These are just things that I'm learning. Oh, that's a good one. Here's some attempts that I had of taking pictures of my brother's fish tank. I think these actually turned out pretty well. I'd be curious to see what happened if this is taken through glass, and I wasn't getting too much reflection, but maybe if I put a polarizer on, it would look even better because you get some softness and the light sort of diffuses off the surface of the glass. But I thought these turned out pretty well. I like these. I like the colors. I like that the animal eye focus was actually focusing on the eyeballs of this fish, which is cool. So those turned out pretty well. And now we're getting into some more low light pictures that I was taking where I was trying to figure out the relationship between, again, doing the shutter speed and then ISO, like how far can I push the ISO without things getting noisy. This isn't bad. I think he's still a little soft because he was moving and I didn't have the shutter speed quite high enough, but not really much noise to speak of here. And I think that's a pretty nice image. And again, this is still kind of under the same lighting conditions, just little relatives and stuff. So I was trying to find that balance, and I think I was sort of getting it there. These are more like snapshots, but again, it's just me trying to mechanically figure out how to use the camera. Here is with not high enough shutter speed. Yet again, this is something that I just have to get. Now's when you can start seeing some noise creeping in here. Quite a bit of noise, and I think my ISO was way high. Here, I just thought, maybe some monochrome. And I just liked this composition here with the hallway, the dog. I don't know, just trying to get a little more creative. I enjoy these shots. So here's me trying to do some landscape photography. These are the Canadian Cascades. I think these are actually like north of Vancouver. I'm in Birch Bay at the moment, or I was when I was taking this picture. And what did I learn from this? The lighting was not great for this kind of photo. It was sort of overcast. I was too far away to have this picture look very impactful, I think. I think I would need either a longer focal length or I would need to be closer because this is just kind of It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't make me think, ooh, those are really cool, jagged-looking mountains. They're just sort of dissolving into the background there. Meh. So not great there. This one, I just kind of like the abstract nature of these branches and just the texture, gnarled texture of these branches. I just thought it looked good. But again, this is me just trying to do more landscape stuff that don't quite have the eye for yet. Trying to take more just abstract kinds of shots. And I thought I'd try again with the birds, but yet again, we find out that the 105 millimeter focal length is not quite long enough. They are just too small. I mean, I guess it's kind of neat to see them in this environment and to see the colors from the sun rising. But yeah, if I want to go birding, I think I need a longer lens. And that brings us to today. So I'm trying to take in all this information that I've been gaining. I thought, I guess against my better judgment, that I would try one more time to take some pictures of some crows. And you can see this is after a couple weeks of learning some things, learning about shutter speed and aperture and ISO, learning about focal length and a little bit about composition. Now, these are just pretty much raw. I just threw the Vivid preset over these. I haven't really done any editing. And again, you'll see that most of these would need some cropping, and none of these are cropped right now because, like I said, doing a 105 millimeter focal length isn't necessarily long enough to get close to some of these birds. But if we just zip through some of these, you can see that action is well frozen. Shutter speed is doing pretty good here on this guy, I think. Let's see, let's zoom in on him. Getting some good movement and action there. You can see them grabbing their peanuts. The picture takes a really nice image, or the camera takes a really nice image. So this is cropped in quite a ways. You know, that's the full photo. There we are, cropped in. So it still looks pretty good with that, even with 20 megapixel sensor. I just want to zip through some of these because I think it's nicely illustrative of, Where's the bird? Oh, there it is. Flying away. We start just, you know, I'm throwing some peanuts, getting some crows. Pretty much all of these were in focus, and that's one thing I was really surprised by, is the fact that the animal eye focus, even though a crow is black and their eyes are black, it was actually picking out the eye. I'd say, I don't know, 1 out of 10 photos wouldn't be in focus. This one was nice, freezing the action there. I like that. He's got 2 peanuts in his beak at the moment, a little greedy. So most of these, again, are just from kind of too far away to be a really effective picture, at least in my opinion. But we're getting there, I think. We're getting there with our focus. We're getting there with our exposure. We're getting there with our shutter speed. I think I shot all of these at 1/2000. So they're pretty much all frozen. No softness because of movement, really, which is nice. Like this. This is a nice picture of a crow, even cropped in that much. I think we're getting somewhere, gang. I think we're getting somewhere. I'd love to have like a 600 millimeter or even just a 200 would actually probably do it to get some really fancy pictures of animals. I love it when they've got the 2 peanuts in their mouth at once. Beak, I guess. This one's cool. You get a little bit of softness from the wings because they're just moving so quickly, but you can see how nice and sharp the claws are, the talons. I think it looks like it was focused, I don't know if it was focused on the eye or almost more on the legs there. But, you know, looking pretty cool. Oh, here's a little dude up there checking things out. Just going through these. At one point, a Stellar's jay came along and started annoying the crows, trying to steal the peanuts. How many of these things do I have here? Here we go. Little Stellar's jay. Looking good. They're the loudest frickin' bird in the world. But look at that. This is zoomed in a lot. I could crop this picture right here, and that's a pretty nice photo. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with the colors. I'm happy with the focus. We're getting somewhere. Several weeks worth of just kind of learning, not on the job, but just learning by doing, I guess. All right, buddy. Ah, that's nice. Look at that. Frozen. And the camera was just tracking this bird. It's pretty amazing. I didn't even have it on servo autofocus. I was just having it on one shot. But still, I was able to get nicely in focus pictures of these birds. I really enjoyed this one for some reason, just because if you zoom in, you get the camera's focusing perfectly on the crow's eye, and he's just sort of peekabooing behind this branch. I wonder if I could sort of crop this to make it look interesting. I don't want to crop too much though, because again, we're playing with 20 megapixels. Here's a nice one too, where the crow's like, the Stellar's jay came in, stole the peanut, and the crow's looking at me like, what's going on here, man? I thought these were for me. What's this blue jay doing here? We finally, towards the end, get some photos where the birds are kind of close enough to not have to crop the pictures. That's a nice one. Look at that. He looks so regal. So by the time we get here, yeah, we're getting a lot closer. And just look at the detail on these. I think they look fantastic. This camera takes amazing pictures, or I can take some pretty good pictures with this camera in spite of the fact that I am very inexperienced and still don't really know what I'm doing. But it helps to have a camera like this. I mean, look at that. Look at that guy. Look at how handsome he is. So there it is. This is after a few weeks of shooting with the Canon R6. And these are the kinds of photos I'm able to get now. Are they amazing? No, they're not amazing. But I think they are much improved over where you saw me starting. And I can only imagine that things are going to get better. Oh man, you greedy, greedy crow. So, at the beginning of the video, and I guess in sort of a roundabout way, we asked the question, can a new fancy camera make you a photographer? Can it turn you into a good photographer? And I guess the answer to that question is no. I obviously have a long way to go, but what the camera has done and what it can do is help you learn. I think just having the experience of a camera like this, which is not limiting in any way, really. If I'm taking a bad picture, it's not the camera's fault, it's my fault. And when you can no longer blame your equipment, I think it really helps you up your game and it makes you learn. It's sort of like throwing you into the deep end. And the fact that I've been shooting in manual mode since I've gotten this camera has really helped me learn the relationship between aperture and shutter speed and ISO. It's helped me really get my exposures a lot better than they ever would have been in the past. And it's also taught me some of the limitations of the equipment you use. I have this 24-105 L lens, which is really nice. It's an f4 constant aperture, but if I'm trying to photograph birds, as you saw in some of my photos, it doesn't quite have the reach. If I want really pronounced depth of field and that bokeh that everybody loves so much, an f4 maybe isn't quite wide enough for that. There's nothing wrong with the lens, but you are able to learn through using it that maybe there's other more specialized equipment that you need for certain looks and certain aesthetics that you're going for. I've learned a ton in the few weeks since I've gotten this camera, and I'm really looking forward to learning more. I want to be a photographer, probably just a hobbyist photographer, but it's really something that's been exciting me lately. And knowing that I have this equipment and the ability to take fantastic shots as long as I know what I'm doing, it just really makes me want to keep going and keep getting better. I'm sure I'll be adding some more lenses onto this kit right now. It's the EOS R6 with the 24-105 f4L USM IS lens. I'm not sure if I got all of those abbreviations in the proper place, but I'll probably be adding a 50mm prime, maybe a 35mm prime in the future. And I think every once in a while we'll check back in and we'll see if my photography has improved. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.